Massachusetts is a commonwealth celebrated for its revolutionary spirit, its cobbled lanes, and its picturesque beauty. Yet beneath this quaint exterior, behind the crisp white steeples and rolling hills, a much older presence lingers. There are forgotten chambers, stones that seem to whisper, and ancient alignments that resist modern understanding. These are not simple folk tales told to tourists. These are enigmas hewn into the very bedrock and written in the shadows. In the peaceful town of Westford, tucked away beside a quiet residential road, lies something incongruous. It is not grand or imposing. It does not cry out for notice. It is simply there, a weathered slab of granite, partially obscured by moss and grass, easily missed unless one is deliberately seeking it out. Should you look for it, however, what you discover might well challenge your understanding of American history. The locals know it as the Westford Knight. At a casual glance, it appears to be little more than a faint impression upon the rock's surface. Perhaps it is a figure wielding a sword, or maybe it is just a series of random scratches. Yet, for an increasing number of inquisitive minds, including researchers and amateur historians, it could represent something far more significant. They're convinced it is the effigy of a medieval warrior, etched in a solid New England stone, potentially centuries before Columbus navigated the Atlantic. Consider that for a moment, a knight clad in armor, sword at the ready, present in Massachusetts, not in a painting or a chronicle, but carved directly into the land. Legend holds that this carving commemorates the final resting place of Sir James Gunn, a Scottish knight who journeyed with Prince Henry Sinclair on a clandestine expedition to North America in the late 14th century. The hypothesis is astounding. That Sinclair, the Earl of Orkney, traversed the ocean long before Columbus, established contact with native populations in Nova Scotia and New England, and interred one of his companions right here, leaving this stony tribute behind. Before delving into the theories, let us examine the carving. You can find the knight on a slope off a local road, not within a museum or protected by glass. There are no barriers or surveillance. It is exposed to the elements, the changing seasons, and any passerby who might happen upon it. Initially, it may look like a random fissure, but with prolonged observation, forms begin to emerge: a helmet, a blade, an arm, a shield. Some even claim to discern a symbol, a star-like crest purportedly belonging to the Gunn clan. No one is certain when the carving was first discovered. Townspeople were aware of it during the 1800s, but it did not capture widespread interest until the 1950s. It was then that an amateur historian named Frank Glynn began to publicize the narrative. He was certain it was evidence of Prince Henry Sinclair's voyage to the New World, a full century before Columbus. According to this theory, Sinclair's fleet of Norse-Scottish vessels made landfall in what is now Nova Scotia around 1398. From there, they navigated south along the coast, potentially arriving in Massachusetts. At some point during the journey, Sir James Gunn perished, and his comrades etched this memorial into the rock. This notion directly confronts the history taught in schools. While textbooks may briefly acknowledge Leif Erikson's arrival in Newfoundland around the year 1000, the narrative typically leaps forward to Columbus in 1492. What if other voyages took place, unrecorded and overlooked by mainstream history? This is why the Westford Knight generates so much discussion. Naturally, not everyone accepts the account. Some specialists contend the carving is merely a product of nature, the outcome of millennia of wind, rain, and ice fracturing the stone. Others suggest it could have been created later, perhaps by residents in the 19th century aiming to fabricate an intriguing local legend. There was, after all, a popular movement at that time to imbue New England with a sense of ancient mystery. But even if we assume it was carved by human hands, the question of who and when remains. Proponents of the knight theory argue that it contains too many specific details to be coincidental. They draw attention to the sword's design, the style of armor, and the alleged crest, comparing them to authentic 14th century knightly regalia. Some have even superimposed images of medieval armaments onto the carving to demonstrate the remarkable correspondence. Furthermore, there is a broader context. The Westford Night is not an isolated anomaly in New England. Stone chambers, mysterious carvings, and enigmatic patterns are dispersed throughout the region, many of their origins unknown. Some speculate they are all interconnected, fragments of an ancient map or a forgotten narrative hiding in plain sight. Even more audacious theories connect the night to the fabled Knights Templar. In this version, Sinclair possessed connections to the Templars and transported their secrets, perhaps even their riches, to the New World long before the official age of European discovery commenced. Whether this idea sounds thrilling or preposterous likely hinges on one's willingness to revise the past. But the element that truly resonates with people is not just about the evidence. It is the feeling. Visitors to the site describe a peculiar quality in the atmosphere. Not eerie or haunted, but simply different, as if the location itself holds a memory, as if the stone is clutching a secret. And despite the skepticism, the controversy persists. New photographs are constantly being captured, scans are performed, and historians and enthusiasts continue to debate in books, blogs, and documentaries. Every individual has a theory, yet no consensus is reached. All the while, the night remains precisely where it has always been. Today, a small plaque designates the location. The carving is faded, worn by time, contention, and the elements, but it remains discernible. Locals maintain the surrounding area, and teachers occasionally bring students on field trips. And now and then, a curious traveler arrives, hears the story, and observes something they cannot account for. Is it a grave, a fabrication, or a hint to a lost chapter of human history? The town of Westford offers no answers. In the stone, it does not speak. It simply waits. In the serene coastal town of Bourne, Massachusetts, where the Cape Cod Canal carves through strata of history and old maritime lore, there is a peculiar slab of stone concealed in plain view. It is not buried deep in the forest or secured in a vault. You will find it protected by glass within a modest local museum, resting placidly as if it possesses knowledge the rest of us lack. It is known as the Bourne Stone. At first, it appears as just a piece of granite, approximately 3 feet wide and 2 feet high, gray, weathered, and irregular. But when you step nearer, you notice it, an unusual rectangular panel incised into the stone's face. Within this panel are strange figures, symbols, and perhaps letters, a message left by an unidentifiable author. The true enigma is not merely what it communicates, but who inscribed it, for what purpose, and how long ago. Let's go back in time. The earliest known reference to the Bourne Stone dates to the 1600s. At that time, however, it was not regarded as a relic. It was literally incorporated into the foundation of a trading post. Imagine that. Someone viewed this carved, mysterious slab and decided it would serve well as part of a wall. It was hidden beneath floorboards, largely forgotten, but it endured. As the building passed through different owners and centuries elapsed, the stone remained. Eventually, it was noticed and people began to pose questions. This is when the situation became perplexing, because no one, not historians, not archaeologists, could definitively interpret the carvings. The symbols etched into the panel appear deliberate, yet they do not correspond to any recognized language. Some characters resemble Roman letters, while others are akin to ancient runes. A few look like nothing ever recorded. As one might expect, theories proliferated. Some proposed the markings were of Native American origin. Others asserted they were Portuguese. A few even advanced wild notions involving Phoenicians or Norse adventurers. Was it a headstone, a territorial marker, or a message for someone who never arrived? One of the most prominent theories connects the stone to the Portuguese explorer Miguel Corte Real, who disappeared in 1502. According to this idea, Corte Real or his crew reached the New England coast and left this carved stone, possibly to signal their presence. Adherents of this theory point to a symbol that looks like the cross employed by Portuguese mariners, particularly those associated with the Knights of Christ. This same cross was frequently inscribed on their vessels during the Age of Discovery. But this is not the only theory in circulation. Some contend the Bourne Stone is even more ancient, left by Norse explorers who sailed beyond Newfoundland and reached as far south as Cape Cod. They argue the markings are similar to Viking runes, the type discovered in Greenland and Iceland. And if Norse ruins genuinely exist at L'Anse aux Meadows in Canada, it is not an incredible leap to envision their ships hugging the coast a bit farther south and carving this as a signpost, a message, or a monument. Then there are the theories that reach even further into the past. Some researchers speculate the markings could be the work of ancient Mediterranean seafarers, perhaps even the Phoenicians, who might have crossed the Atlantic thousands of years ago. This may seem far-fetched, but where the Bourne Stone is concerned, nothing is ever entirely discounted. Even the form of the carving contributes to the mystery. The rectangular panel is strangely exact, with clean edges and straight lines that seem almost machine-made. It is too perfect to be haphazard, too deliberate to be dismissed as mere graffiti. It does not have the feel of an accident. Whoever carved it invested time, took measurements, and clearly intended for it to endure. And centuries later, it has. Experts have attempted to decipher it for years. Linguists, cryptographers, historians, but no one can settle on a translation. Some suggest that sections of the stone were modified or forged during colonial times, but there is no definitive evidence of this. So it remains a stone that declines to speak. Today, it has become a quiet legend in the town of Bourne. The locals are aware of it. Some discuss it over coffee. Tour guides mention it occasionally, but beyond that, it remains obscure. It is not famous, not gone viral, just waiting, a potential key to an ancient segment of history, collecting dust behind glass. If you go to the Bourne Historical Society, you can see it for yourself. The stone is right there, preserved and displayed. It does not shift, glow, or whisper, yet people report a strange sensation when they stand before it. An odd energy, a peculiar quiet, as if they are being observed by something ancient. Some describe a sense of déjà vu, as if they almost comprehend the symbols, as if the message is tantalizingly close, just beyond their grasp. And the question still remains, who created this and why? If it was indeed corte real, then Portuguese explorers arrived here decades before the Pilgrims set sail. If it was the Norse, then Cape Cod might have been part of an old Viking sea route. And if it was neither of them, if it was someone we have not yet even imagined, then our entire comprehension of early exploration may need to be rewritten. The Bourne Stone provides no answers. It just sits there, heavy, silent, and expectant. Meanwhile, the town of Bourne carries on. Boats glide along the canal, and families cycle past the historical building, many unaware of what is held within. But those who are in on the secret keep returning. They keep posing the same question. And every so often, a new person steps inside and begins to wonder as well. They say the land holds memories, that some places store their stories not just in the rustling trees or flowing rivers, but within the stone itself, shaped not by chisel and hammer, but slowly and patiently by the hand of time. This is precisely what you discover deep in southeastern Massachusetts, concealed within the Freetown State Forest, a massive, silent visage in the rock, watching and waiting. The locals know it as Profile Rock. This is no small relic behind a barrier or secure in a museum. Profile Rock emerges directly from the earth, nearly 50 feet tall, imposing, weathered, and, when viewed from the correct angle, unmistakable. You see it clearly, a perfect profile with a strong brow, a straight nose, and lips set as if holding back a thought. It seems less like a product of erosion and more like a moment captured in stone. But this is not just any face. For generations, the Wampanoag people, the original inhabitants of this land, have believed the rock bears the likeness of Massasoit Osamakin, the great sachem of the Pecanicut tribe. According to their oral history, this was no accident. The rock was a sacred place, a center of spirit and narrative, a location where the separation between our world and the next was exceptionally thin. And even today, surrounded by roads, smartphones, and the clamor of modern existence, Profile Rock refuses to diminish. The woods that cradle it carry their own reputation. Freetown State Forest is not just any woodland. It is one of the most enigmatic and paranormally charged locations in the state. People tell of floating lights, abrupt cold spots, and strange voices that seem to whisper from nowhere. Some claim to have become disoriented on trails they have known for years. Others speak of symbols etched into trees, markings no one has claimed responsibility for. And at the heart of it all stands the stone face, silent and observant. This is where the story takes a stranger turn. Some visitors assert that the face has altered over time, not drastically, as in a film, but in subtle ways. The eyes appear deeper, the mouth slightly more taut, the angle of the head minutely different. Photographs taken at various times and in different lighting conditions seem to capture small shifts, as if the rock is alive, responsive, and sentient. And perhaps it is. Wampanoag elders recount that Profile Rock was once a site for spiritual quests, a place to commune with ancestors, a sacred ground where prayers were made and wisdom was sought. This was not superstition or fantasy, but simply another method of connecting with the unseen. However, not everyone has shown it reverence. In 2019, someone defaced the rock with spray paint, marring the centuries-old surface with graffiti. It was a crude, thoughtless violation of something deeply sacred. The act provoked outrage, not only from native communities, but from people all over the region, hikers, historians, locals, and even skeptics. Because even if one dismisses the legends, there's an inherent wrongness in disrespecting the unknown. Measures were taken to clean the stone and preserve it. But it was not the first time Profile Rock had been harmed. Illegal dumping, off-road vehicle damage, and even rumors of bizarre rituals at night have plagued the forest. Many believe this constant disruption has agitated something, that disturbing the equilibrium here may have awakened forces best left undisturbed. And yet, the face endures. It is more than a natural feature. It is a symbol of resilience, a testament to an indigenous history that extends far beyond written accounts. The Wampanoag did not require scientific validation to know this place held power. They simply knew. And if you visit today, whether out of curiosity or reverence, you will sense it too. That change in the atmosphere, that pause in your own thoughts, the gravity of something watching. Some researchers theorize that Profile Rock is part of a larger system of sacred sites, locations connected by ancient energies and aligned in ways modern science has yet to explain. They speak of lines of force, sacred geometry, and thin places where the worlds converge, and Profile Rock might just be the nexus of that network. Others propose a different explanation. They suggest the face was not formed by nature alone. They believe that at some point, thousands of years ago, it was sculpted, not by colonists, not even by recognized native tribes, but by an older, forgotten civilization that left behind no ruins or texts, only stone. The face, they argue, is too well-defined, too perfect, too deliberate to be a mere accident. If that is the case, then who was its creator? And what were they trying to convey? You see, the question is not just how the face came to be here, but why it still remains. This stone has weathered centuries. It has survived storms, conflicts, and even defacement. And still, it persists, watching and waiting. You can sense it when you enter the clearing. Something ancient, something immense. You do not need to believe in ghosts to feel it. You only need to be still. Today, Profile Rock remains accessible. There are signs, parking areas, and patrols to deter further damage. But once you leave the pavement and step into the forest, the world shifts. The air grows dense, the trees fall silent, and then, visible through the branches, you see it, a face cast in granite, Massasoit, or perhaps something even older. People still talk. They whisper about the lights, the sounds, and the feeling you get when you stand too close for too long. Something ancient is stirring here, something scarred but not extinguished. In a world consumed by facts, Profile Rock remains an unanswered question. and it makes no attempt to explain itself. It just waits. At times, a map can reveal more than any history book, not through facts and footnotes, but through its mysteries, rivers that do not exist, cities that never were, and names whispered across oceans by mariners pursuing the gleam of something just beyond the horizon. On the edge of one such map, drawn by early explorers charting what they believed was a new world, rests a single word: Norumbega. It was said to be a city of gold, with stone towers and immense riches hidden deep within the forests of the New World. Some claimed it was situated near the Penobscot River in Maine. Others insisted it was closer to the Charles River in Massachusetts. But here is the puzzling part. No one has ever located it. There are no ruins, no treasure, not a single undeniable artifact. And yet, Norumbega refuses to fade into obscurity. The legend begins in the 1500s as European explorers started to chart the northeastern coastline of North America. Their reports were often a jumble of direct observation, rumor, and pure speculation. Nevertheless, they repeatedly made reference to a place that was larger, richer, and more mysterious than any settlement they had encountered. They named it Norumbega, a word that might have been a misinterpretation of native languages, or perhaps a hand-me-down from even older seafaring lore. On those ancient maps, Norumbega was depicted not merely as a town, but as an empire, rendered in ink with spires, domes, and occasionally a small king upon a throne. Its location shifted from map to map, but the concept endured: a powerful, hidden city somewhere in the northeast. The accounts never aligned. Explorers could not agree on its location or even its nature. A French navigator, Jean Alphonse, asserted he had passed it in the mid-1500s, describing stone structures and bustling trade. Others claimed it was a native settlement with unusually sophisticated architecture. English explorers seized upon the story, certain that Norumbega awaited in the wilderness, its foundations perhaps holding tales of ancient European contact. But here's where the story gets strange. This was not just an isolated error. Norumbega continued to appear on maps long after real cities like Boston and Plymouth were established. Norumbega was still there, still drawn and labeled, like a ghost that no one could quite exorcise. This led people to wonder, what if it was not merely a myth? Let's step back and imagine. Long before Columbus, even before the Vikings, another group reached these shores, not with wooden huts and temporary encampments, but with stone, with commerce, with something more lasting. Perhaps they remained for a generation, or just a single season. And when they departed, the city dissolved, but not entirely. Maybe Norumbega was the final remnant of whoever they were. Some believe it was the Basque who were fishing these waters before most of Europe had even heard of the New World. Others propose it was Norse explorers who ventured inland from Newfoundland and established a short-lived settlement. Then there are the more speculative minds, who link Norumbega to an ancient maritime civilization, something older than any of our recorded histories, something akin to Atlantis. This may sound incredible, but consider this. Why did Norumbega feature on so many maps? Why did so many explorers claim to have heard of it from local tribes? And why has no one, after centuries of investigation, been able to definitively disprove its existence? Now we arrive in Massachusetts. In the 1800s, a Harvard professor named Eben Norton Horsford became fixated on Norumbega. He was not just a curious scholar. He was convinced he had found it. After poring over maps, journals, and legends, he focused on the Charles River, near present-day Weston and Newton. He proclaimed this was the site of Norumbega. But he did not stop there. Horsford believed Leif Erikson had sailed up the Charles and founded a Norse colony that later gave rise to the Norumbega legend. He even constructed a stone tower and set a monument near the river, identifying it as Leif's house. To this day, those markers remain. Most historians dismissed him, arguing it was wishful thinking, that Horsford had allowed legend to obscure his judgment. But he never recanted, and some quietly suspect he may have been onto something. This is where the situation becomes even more intriguing. Norumbega is present on dozens of maps and is described in detail by multiple explorers, yet there is no physical evidence. No city ruins, no golden walls. It is a legend constructed entirely from lines on parchment. Still, it feels as if it could have been real. Perhaps it was never a grand city of gold. Maybe it was smaller, a gathering spot, a trade center, a settlement that rose and fell, quietly swallowed by the forest. After all, not all civilizations collapse in fire and glory. Some simply fade away. And in a region like New England, where forests quickly reclaim paths and time erodes stone faster than memory, it is not inconceivable that something once stood and then simply vanished. Now for the twist. Today, the Charles River meanders through placid neighborhoods. Weston, Newton, the kind of towns where people walk their dogs and mow their lawns. But if you follow the riverbank, particularly near where Horsford erected his markers, you might notice odd stone structures, moss-covered and out of place, with no signs or explanations. The shapes just hints. Some believe ancient chambers lie buried near the river. Others talk of strange markings on old stones, visible only to those who know where to search. And on occasion, someone reports discovering an object that does not quite fit, out of place and out of time. Is Norumbega real? Perhaps not in the way those old maps envisioned. Maybe there were no towers, no palaces, no roads paved with gold. But maybe, just maybe, it was something, a piece of a forgotten timeline, a glimmer of a story we never fully chronicled. And perhaps that is the point. Not every mystery needs a solution. Some are meant to make us look closer, to pay attention, and to wonder. Today, the towns of Weston and Newton lead quiet, modern lives. But if you walk along the river, where the trees droop low and the air grows still, the name still whispers. Norumbega, a city built from memory, imagined by many and forgotten by none. In the quiet town of Upton, Massachusetts, beyond the white picket fences and along meandering colonial-era roads, there is a hill. And buried within that hill is something peculiar, something ancient, something that does not quite belong to the world that has grown up around it. It is known as the Upton Chamber. At first, it seems unremarkable, just a small stone opening on a grassy incline, the kind of structure one might mistake for an old root cellar. But step nearer, lower your head, and pass through that constricted entrance, and everything is transformed. Inside, the corridor opens into a circular chamber constructed entirely of stone. There is no mortar, no evidence of modern tools, just enormous granite slabs stacked with perfect precision, creating a corbelled dome that has supported itself for centuries, perhaps even longer. And in that instant, you sense it, not just the chill in the air or the silence, but something more profound, something more ancient, as if you have entered a place that holds memories. The first question anyone poses is straightforward. Who constructed this? The truthful answer is that no one knows for certain. Some suggest it was built by early colonists, perhaps in the 1600s, for the purpose of storing food or ice. But if you stand inside that stone room for even a minute, that theory begins to unravel. Colonial farmers did not build in this manner, particularly not underground, and certainly not with granite slabs the size of truck hoods, shaped and fitted with such meticulous care. And then there is the matter of a light. Once a year, on the summer solstice, the setting sun aligns perfectly with the entrance tunnel. The final rays of daylight stream down the passage and illuminate the back wall of the chamber, like a spotlight from another realm. Now, ask yourself, why would a colonial farmer go to the immense trouble of aligning a vegetable cellar with a celestial phenomenon? This is where the story becomes strange. The Upton Chamber is not the only structure of its kind. Other stone chambers are scattered across New England, in Vermont, New Hampshire, and even Connecticut. But this one is the largest, the most intact, and by far the most enigmatic. This has given rise to numerous theories. Some believe the chamber was erected by native peoples long before the arrival of Europeans, used for ceremonies or astronomical observation. Others think it dates back even further, that it is evidence of pre-Columbian visitors, perhaps Celts, perhaps Norse, or even a forgotten culture that once crossed the Atlantic and left this stone fingerprint in the Massachusetts soil. It may sound impossible until you are standing within it. The design feels intentional. The stones have not shifted. The roof has not collapsed, and the tunnel does not curve or bend. It points with a purpose, as if it were designed to track something or to welcome it. There are whispers, too, not of actual voices, but of stories and strange sensations. Visitors have reported feeling dizzy or as if time momentarily slipped sideways. Cameras have malfunctioned, and compass needles have spun erratically. Some people describe a low humming sound inside the chamber, a vibration felt more in the chest than heard with the ears. Others believe the mystery goes even deeper, that tunnels once extended farther into the hillside, and that the chamber was merely the entrance to something larger, something now buried or collapsed. Over the years, amateur archaeologists have attempted to trace these supposed passages. Dowsers have charted energy lines, and acoustics experts have studied the chamber, claiming it produces peculiar echoes, standing waves, and even vibrations. Was it a temple, a space for meditation, a calendar made of stone, or was something else entirely? Modern archaeology offers few definitive answers. Official records still classify it as a root cellar, but that explanation feels more like a convenient label than a firm conclusion. The reason is that there are no records of its construction, no colonial accounts, no town documents, and no stories passed down through generations. This suggests the chamber was not just forgotten over time. It was already forgotten when the settlers arrived. Today, the Upton Chamber is nestled behind a line of trees, just a short walk from residential homes and town buildings. A small trail leads to it. There's no ticket counter, no gift shop, just a few steps off the main path, and you're standing at its entrance. And the nearer you get, the more it begins to feel like something sacred or ancient or both. It does not attempt to overwhelm you. It does not boast. It simply is quiet, mysterious, and impossibly old. It feels as if it is waiting for something or someone. Perhaps it is just a chamber. Or perhaps it is a message, a monument to a chapter of human history that we have lost or never intended to discover. Because if something like this can remain hidden in a Massachusetts hillside for 1,000 years, unaltered, untouched, and still perfectly aligned with the sun, then what else is out there? What else have we overlooked? Today, the town of Upton goes about its business. Children ride bicycles, lawns are mowed, and the world moves on. But beneath the surface, under the hills and trees, the chamber waits, watching the sky, marking time, and holding on to a secret that might just outlast us all. Whatever its purpose, its work is not yet done. Sometimes, history does not whisper from beneath the earth or conceal itself within strange stone carvings. Sometimes it stands in plain sight, massive, unmovable, and challenges you to disregard it. Just outside the small town of Rehoboth, Massachusetts, there is such a place, a granite formation rising from the woods like the exposed backbone of the world, rough, ancient, and scarred. The locals call it Anawan Rock. At first, it appears to be just another large stone, one of many scattered across New England. But this one carries a story, a brutal and unresolved chapter of America's early history. And once you learn what transpired here, you will never see it in the same light again. Let's turn back the clock. The year is 1676 during the summer. The colonies are ablaze, caught in the final blood-soaked days of King Philip's War, one of the most lethal conflicts per capita in American history. Native tribes throughout New England had united under the Wampanoag leader Medicum, whom the English called King Philip, to push back against colonial encroachment. What ensued was a brutal war that left both sides devastated. By August, Medicum was already dead, shot and decapitated near Mount Hope. But one of his most senior warriors, Anawan, an elderly sachem and trusted captain, was still at large, still fighting, and still a symbol of resistance. This brings us to this rock. Here, beneath its imposing face and nestled among the trees, Anawan and his group of followers were camped. exhausted, pursued, and oblivious that their time was drawing to a close. On August 28th, Captain Benjamin Church, a colonial ranger who had spent the war adopting native tactics to use against them, tracked Anawan's band to this location. Under the cloak of darkness, Church and his men moved silently through the forest, ascended the rock, and encircled the camp. Anawan, recognizing that the conflict was over, surrendered without a fight. He presented Church with his ceremonial headdress, a sacred artifact laden with spiritual significance, as a gesture of peace and respect. In return, Church promised mercy, assuring Anawan that his life would be spared. But the colonial authorities had different intentions. Shortly after his capture, Anawan was executed. There was no trial, no pardon, just the silencing of another leader who had refused to submit. And this is where the mystery begins, because something shifted after that night. Over the years, visitors to Anawan Rock have reported unusual phenomena, whispers that seem to echo across the stone when no one else is present, and the sound of drums, soft and rhythmic, carried on the still air. People describe a presence here, particularly at twilight, not malevolent or violent, but watchful and expectant. Others have witnessed flickering lights near the rock, like phantom campfires that glow for a moment before disappearing. A few have even claimed to see shadowy figures moving at the edge of the trees, glimpses of warriors who have not entirely departed. And there's always the feeling, a palpable heaviness, not oppressive but undeniable, as if the rock itself remembers what occurred, as if it refuses to let the story die. Some believe the site is cursed, not in the sense of a horror film, but spiritually unsettled. They feel that the betrayal of Anawan disrupted a sacred balance, that his surrender and trust were violated here, and the land has borne the weight of that act ever since. Others view it as hallowed ground, not haunted but honored, a place where memory has gathered and resists being erased. After all, Anawan was more than just a warrior. He was one of the last living connections to a way of life that colonization sought to obliterate. His capture signified the official conclusion of King Philip's War, but not the end of the narrative. Because the rock is still here, and it is not concealed. You can walk right up to it. There is a small sign, a few trees, and the sound of birds in the distance. It feels like any other patch of woodland until you are standing before it. Then, suddenly, everything becomes quieter. The light seems to change, and something ancient begins to press in at the periphery of your senses. It is not your imagination. It is history seeping through the cracks. Over time, Anawan Rock has become a site of pilgrimage, not in a religious sense, but in an emotional one. People come here to feel something, to stand where it happened, to touch the stone, and contemplate how such a quiet moment could carry so much weight. The rock does not speak, but it holds the silence like a memory, a boundary marker between what was and what came after. Today, Rehoboth is a peaceful town with colonial homes, quiet streets, and children on bicycles. But deep within the trees, this one rock continues to watch and remember. It is not about ghosts or glowing lights. It is about truth, a moment frozen in stone, and a name, Anawan, that refuses to vanish. Because sometimes the land does not just remember, it will not allow you to forget. Hidden within the tangled woodlands of Lynn, Massachusetts, in a park more celebrated for its picturesque views than its secrets, there is a hole in the earth that has consumed entire lifetimes. It is not merely a cave. It is a scar, a monument to obsession, and a symbol of the lengths one man would go to pursue a ghost. They call it Dungeon Rock. The story begins with a pirate. The year was 1658 when a massive storm battered the coast of Lynn, uprooting trees, flooding the lowlands, and smashing vessels against the rocks. But in the aftermath of the tempest, locals recounted something even stranger than fallen oaks and washed-out roads. The sudden appearance of a lone pirate dragging a heavy chest into the forest. He was the last survivor of a crew that had sailed with Captain Thomas Veal, one of the many privateers-turned-pirates who prowled the Atlantic in the 17th century. Veal had fled inland, seeking to hide his treasure and escaped the grasp of colonial law. He was observed hauling his bounty into a cave deep in the Saugus Woods, and then the earth claimed him. An earthquake, uncommon in Massachusetts, but not unheard of, struck shortly thereafter. The cave collapsed, its entrance was sealed, and the pirate and his gold disappeared into legend, buried beneath tons of unyielding granite. For nearly 2 centuries, the story remained just that, a tale told around campfires, passed from one generation to the next. A lost pirate, a hidden fortune, a cave that no longer had an entrance. But then came Hiram Marble. In the mid-1800s, Marble purchased a parcel of land in what is now Lynn Woods Reservation, asserting that he had been contacted by the pirate's ghost, the long-deceased Captain Veal himself. According to Marble, the spirit revealed the precise location of the treasure. Not only that, but the ghost implored him to dig it out, to complete what fate had interrupted. Most people would have dismissed it as a fantasy and moved on. But Hiram Marble was not most people. He started to dig. With little more than hand tools, dynamite, and sheer, stubborn determination, Hiram Marble, later joined by his son Edwin, devoted the remainder of his life to tunneling through solid rock. They carved a literal dungeon into the bedrock, a descending, winding passage that spiraled ever deeper toward the spot where they believed the treasure was hidden. For decades, they chipped away, blasting rock, removing debris, and reinforcing the walls with iron brick. They even charged admission to curious onlookers to help finance their endeavor. They never found the gold. Not a single coin, not a bone, not a shred of pirate's clothing. And yet, the digging continued. Even after Hiram's death, Edwin carried on, consumed by the same vision, driven, some say, by something more than mere belief, as if the cave itself had taken hold of him. And this is where dungeon rock transitions from strange to unsettling. Visitors who enter the chamber today, and yes, you can still go inside, often comment on the atmosphere. It is not just dark, it is thick. The air feels heavier than it should, and the temperature drops in a way that no surface cave ought to permit. Some report hearing odd tapping sounds, echoes that do not correspond to their footsteps. Others claim to hear whispering, low and rhythmic, like words spoken underwater. There are stories, too, of people emerging from the cave feeling strange, as if they left a part of themselves behind. Others have become disoriented, even though the chamber is relatively small and well-mapped. Something about the place confuses the senses, scrambling one's perception of time and distance. A 10-minute visit can feel like an hour or like 5 minutes. No two accounts are the same. And then there's the feeling, the one that creeps in about halfway down the tunnel. You are not alone. Some attribute this to the power of suggestion, the effect of a legendary tale, and a spooky location playing tricks on the mind. But there are too many stories, too many identical experiences from people who are unfamiliar with the legend, people who simply felt something shift the moment they passed through the iron door. The deeper mystery is not even the treasure, it is the obsession. What drove Hiram Marble to dedicate his life and his entire fortune to a voice from beyond? What kept Edwin chipping away in solitude long after public fascination had waned? And what kind of place draws men into stone and refuses to release them? Dungeon Rock, for all its strangeness, is founded on a true story. There was a pirate. There was a collapse. Hiram Marble did spend decades digging. These are not ghost stories whispered in the dark. They are documented facts. But what lies beneath that reality is something else entirely. Could the cave be more than just a cave? Some have suggested that Dungeon Rock is situated at the center of a natural fault line, where magnetic forces run amok and psychic phenomena are amplified. Others believe it is a portal, a thin place where the barrier between worlds is weak, a place that beckons to people, luring them in with promises of gold or answers or immortality, only to give them something else. And if that sounds far-fetched, consider this. Hiram was not the first person drawn to that stone, and he will likely not be the last. Today, Dungeon Rock is part of Lynn Woods Reservation, a public park filled with trails and quiet forest. Families hike there, Dogs chase sticks, and cyclists glide by on paved paths. But off one trail, behind an iron gate set into a cliffside, the tunnel remains. You can still enter if you are willing to duck your head and face the cold. Bring a flashlight. Be mindful of your footing. Listen carefully. And when you reach the end of the tunnel, where the marble's quest finally concluded, ask yourself what you feel. Not what you think, but what you feel. Because Dungeon Rock does not communicate in words. It speaks in silence, in darkness, in a pressure against your chest, and in thoughts you did not intend to have. There may be no treasure, no skeleton in a pirate's coat, but there is something in that cave, something waiting, something ancient, something that still remembers Captain Veal and the man who followed him down. And it might just be calling for someone new.